Hello everyone, this is Yana Smakula. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm sharing Christmas card ideas with the Spellbinders Merry and Bright products. Now, this is a small collection that consists of 4 products only. There are 3 die sets that you see on the screen right now, and there's also an embossing folder. I did not use the embossing folder for these cards, so that's why I'm not showing it here, but I do have it linked below. I wanted to start by mentioning my favorite die set, but honestly, these are all so great and they all have a bit of charm to them. They're special. So I can't really pick a favorite. I'm going to start by showing you the Merry and Bright dies. And these dies are probably the only dies in this release that are truly meant for Christmas. The other die sets and even the embossing folder can be used all year round. So the Merry and Bright set is designed to give you a tree shape made from letters. There is a shadow die and 2 word dies to complete this Merry and Bright sentiment. Now, these letters, the font might seem familiar because it is the same font that was used for the Be Bold alphabet die set from several years ago. And in fact, you might even think that these dies are identical. That's what I thought. I thought that they were identical, but there is a difference in size. The new Merry die is a little bit bigger. I would say it's a third bigger than the Be Bold alphabet dies. If you have the Be Bold alphabet dies, you can definitely use them to recreate the cards that I'm sharing today. Your tree is just going to end up a bit smaller, and just something to know, there's no ampersand in the Be Bold die set, so you'll need to figure something else out to replace it with. Or you can come up with a whole different sentiment. It doesn't have to be Merry and Bright, it can be something else. I was sure there was an ampersand, and I even went back to check the lowercase Be Bold dies, but sadly there isn't one, but I'm sure there is an ampersand somewhere. I mean, right? There has to be a die set with an ampersand. If you remember a Spellbinders die set with an ampersand, or if there's another die set with an ampersand that you know of, please let us know in the comments below so we can all know where to look for an ampersand. Now, the other 2 dies, there's one that says Bright and one that says Wishes, and they're really cool because unlike other sentiment dies, they cut into paper. So they indent your paper and they give you this modern look. So here I have an example of how the word bright looks once it is cut into the background cardstock piece. Some of the letters did cut through, and you can use your finger and try and remove the rest of the paper that did not cut through. If you don't want to cut through all of the paper, sometimes I will just double up my cardstock. In this way, I have the sentiment really pressed into the paper without any open die cut areas. Now, the idea that I had for these cards featured a die cut tree, so a die cut Merry and then also a die cut sentiment, the word bright, die cut, and a foiled sub-sentiment at the bottom of my panel. So here I have Spellbinders Forest cardstock. It is cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. It will make the front of my card. And I'm going to use sentiments from my delightful Christmas collection from Spellbinders to foil a sub-sentiment for each of my cards. Now, the 1 and the 2-line sentiments seem to work best here. The 3-line sentiment ended up looking a little bit too big and bulky for my taste. I'm using my hinge method to foil the sentiment in the lower center of the panel, and I'm going to foil this in Spellbinders Opal Foil. This is a clear foil with some iridescent shine, and it gives almost a tone-on-tone look on your paper. Now, I rarely use this foil because it is a little bit tricky to use. It is clear, so it sometimes is hard to tell which side of this foil is correct. So there is a lot of room for error. But once you figure this foil out, it gives really a very beautiful and unique effect. Now, I think you can also go with any of the gold foils here. I tried using white foil. This is the opaque white, and it just didn't look quite right to me. It was a little bit too stark white for my taste. So here's how this opal foil looks on dark green. It gives a tone-on-tone look, but instead of this going a shade darker, if you were to use ink, watermark ink on dark cardstock, it would go a shade darker. The foil actually turned the sentiment a shade lighter, and I really like this. It's very different. Now, here's how you can tell which side of foil is correct in case you get confused. So use a piece of tape and stick it onto the foil. If you pick up nothing with your tape, this is the side that needs to face your glimmer plate. If you pick up something like this iridescence, do you see that on the tape? That's the foil. That's the side that needs to touch the paper. It took me a few failed attempts to figure this out, but once I did, I started to really enjoy this foil color. So I foiled several additional panels. I think that this card design is really not too hard to mass produce. Of course, it isn't the easiest one to mass produce, but it isn't that hard either. And it just looks very classy, very stylish and modern. Next, I die cut the Mary die several times from different colors of cardstock and also glitter foam to have different colors for all of my letters. So I die cut one from Mere Gold cardstock, as I especially wanted the star at the top of my tree to be gold. I die cut another layer from the Shimmering Tropics glitter foam sheets from Spellbinders. There's a teal foam and a green foam, and I die cut both. I die cut a layer from Fern cardstock and a layer from Teal Topaz cardstock, and all of these papers and foams are from Spellbinders. Additionally, I die cut a layer from Black Fun Foam to use for the cardstock letters to pop them up on the card. I went with Black Fun Foam here as my background is dark, so black works a lot better as it blends in with the background, while white would have been too visible. It would have shown too much from behind my cardstock letters, and I just didn't want that. I sorted my die cuts by color to make it easier to pick the color and letter that I needed, and I started to build my tree. So gold star at the top, and I adhered the star to black foam star. Next, a teal glitter letter M. Next, a green letter E adhered to black foam. Next, gold letter R adhered to black foam. Next, teal letter R, and I am going to adhere to black foam. Next, green glitter letter Y and teal glitter ampersand. So you can see cardstock is being adhered to Black Fun Foam and the glitter Fun Foam is used as is. Next, I die cut and assembled tiny flowers using the Petite Blooms and Sentiment set from this collection. And I also die cut leaves from all sorts of green cardstock. I really wanted to embellish each letter with a flower or two and add some leaves. Now, this die set, the Petite Blooms and Sentiments, it's not necessarily a Christmas set. The sentiments in this set are surely not Christmas sentiments. And even the flowers, I mean, you do have a poinsettia in this set, and then these red flowers kind of look like Christmas flowers, but if you change the colors, if you use orange, these can work for fall cards. If you use pink, they can work for spring cards. So it's not necessarily a Christmas flower set, but an all year round set. Now, this is a very popular look, adding flowers to die cuts, and something that I've wanted to do for a long time. If you don't have the Petite Blooms die set, or if you don't want to get it, look through your stash to find something similar, but make sure that the flowers and the leaves are small because the size is very important here. It has to be small enough to go well with the letters. If you use the flowers that are too big, it's just going to look odd. As I was gluing my pieces onto my background, I also used magnets to press the letters down onto the background and to help hold them down while the glue is adhering. I have a glass magnetic mat here, and magnets are super helpful when I'm assembling my projects or when I need to hold something down, maybe when I need to center it on my grid. I've started to use these magnets and I really enjoy them. I also die cut the word bright, and this one was cut from Gold Mirror cardstock and Black Fun Foam. I wanted to incorporate a scripty bright here to play with the different font types, and I think that it blended with the Mary perfectly. I created A2 card bases for my cards using the same forest cardstock, and I used some scrap paper. There are 2 sheets of scrap paper. They are adhered together to help flatten the main panel. And the reason for that is main panel warped a little bit when I foiled the sentiments. So when that happens, I like to use this trick, and it seems to work really well. I feel the place where I live right now, it's kind of humid. It's more humid compared to where I used to live. So my paper retains some moisture. And when I go to foil it, it warps. Like I can actually see the moisture on my plates because I never had that before. I didn't have that in my previous place. Now I have this, and the trick to fix that is using those scrap cardstock pieces to help flatten it. It doesn't always work, but it sure does help a lot. So this is the look at the 3 Mary cards I made. I ended up adding additional leaves and flowers overlapping some of the letters. And I also added some red dots or red tiny shapes. And I die cut those using a die from the same Petite Blooms die set and a red fun foam from Spellbinders. And these worked great in place of additional gem embellishments. Next, I wanted to use the bow die to make shaped Christmas cards. This bow is an all-occasion bow. You can cut it from any color of cardstock you want to make a birthday bow, a Halloween bow, a Valentine's Day bow, and so on. I tried cutting several bows from red cardstock, 1 bow from patterned paper. I made some of my bows striped and some of my bows solid. This is a simple die set, but it is very well designed, and it gives you everything you need to create a big, beautiful bow. And the size of this bow is about the size of an A2 card, so it's pretty big. And you can use it as a card, you can use it as a tag, you can also put it as a bow on a present. I think it's a brilliant die. Now notice this inner piece. This one creates a shadow. I have placed it differently on my different bows. On the green bow, it doesn't touch the edge of the bow. It is placed more toward the center. On the red bow, it goes right up to the edge. The red bow was the first one that I put together, so I wasn't sure how this piece needed to be placed. It does work on both bows, but I think the green bow's placement of the shadow piece is just a little bit better. Now, I wanted to make shaped cards, and I didn't want to put this bow on a background. I wanted it to stand on its own. So I die cut an identical bow from the same dark green cardstock, and I used my scoring board to score a line from about 1/4 inch from the top of my bow to create flaps for me to add adhesive and glue the 2 bows together to create a shaped card base. I added a little bit of the Barely Art glue. I aligned the 2 die cuts, and I placed my heavy magnets on top to give my glue time to dry and grab. Now let me show you how I created the striped bow. Here I die cut pieces from the Simon Says Stamp soft navy cardstock. This is the lighter blue that you see on the screen. And then the Spellbinders indigo cardstock. This is the darker blue. So if you want to have a solid bow, you just add the shadow pieces like I have added here. Use the indentations on the narrow part of the bow to help direct and position the shadow pieces. I wasn't sure at first what those indentations were for, but once I figured it out, I understood how genius this die design is. Now, if you want a striped bow, here's how you do it. I die cut the stripes from darker blue, but used black for the shadow. So use the indentations again to help align and position the stripe pieces and the shadow piece to look something like this. Now, I want to add some ink blending before I adhere anything down, so I'm using my Simon Says Stamp Royal Ink and Spellbinders blending brush to add darker blue ink all around the edges of my bow die cuts. With the ink blending done, I can now add my shadow pieces and my stripe pieces. Once you figure out where everything goes, it comes together very easily. So just add your pieces with glue and place something heavy on top for the glue to dry. Next, I wanted to add gold around the edge of the ribbon that makes this bow, or rather paper. So I used my clear embossing ink pad and rubbed it around the edge of the die cut. I added some gold embossing powder onto a piece of scrap paper and dipped the die cut into the gold powder to add some to the edge. I love this trick and I love the result that this gives. I used my heat tool and I heat set the powder to melt it. See, this creates the look of gold edge ribbon. Now, I should have also added this gold to the top of the stripe piece to have this have a more realistic look, but I didn't think of that at the time, and now that I've noticed it, I think it looks just as good. You know, it's good as is. I'm not going to redo it. I added gold embossing powder to every piece, and next I used glue to assemble the bow. It's very easy to do once you get the hang of it, and also there is a PDF on the product page on the Spellbinders website that tells you how to assemble everything. Next, I assembled the flowers to decorate my bow, and this time I die cut the stem from green and also from gold cardstock. I cut the gold flowers off and I adhered them onto the green stem so that the flower center would be gold on the finished die cut. And then I added the red die cut flowers on top. Adding the gold is an extra step that can be skipped, but I think it adds so much more wow to the finished piece. It is completely worth the time and effort. I also foiled a tiny tag, and I'm now adding a little bit of red and white twine from Vivant to the tag. I'm going to just tie it into a knot and add little knots to the end of this twine. The sentiment for the tag comes from an older set from Spellbinders called Christmas Magic, and the tag shape was cut using a tag die from the Petite Blooms set from this Merry and Bright collection. Now, I also created a second bow, a plain one from the same color cardstock, but there's no ink blending here and no gold embossing on the edge. I added score lines to it and I glued it from the back of my main bow to create a bow-shaped card. So here's a look at the cards I have for you today, made with a Merry and Bright collection from Spellbinders. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. I hope you feel inspired to create. Love you guys, and I'll see you next time.